there's ways to figure out how much to charge per hour. But I was like, this is a project. It's a one-time thing. I don't want to charge too much and then say no. I don't want to charge too little, and they're like, that's it. You know what I'm saying?
The negotiation part, let's say with the Mavs or with anybody, how do you do that?
The story about the Mavs, I get asked all the time because they're like, how did you do it? Right? Everybody wants to know why you and how, right? So make sure your website is always up to date. Even if you don't use it, make sure they have some way of contacting you through your website.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I feel like when you're at that level, companies can reach out. That's the value.
Hey everybody, this is Renato and this is Pieces Fire. I'm here with Agustin Chavez, which I was about to say AKA, but no. His brand is Dummy Fresh, and I've known this cat for like a few years now. I was lucky enough to work with him with the Dallas Cowboys, and he is, why don't you tell them a little bit of what you are and what it is that you do, because I think there's more titles that cover that, huh?
Yeah, so I'm a creative. I think I call myself a creative because I do a lot of stuff. I do photography for my own personal brand. I do, my reels. I do anything that involves with, coming up from something from a drawing to a full product. It's hard to say that I'm a graphic designer because I do more than graphics. I do, video editing. I do embroidery. All that stuff takes some type of creative effort. So at the end of the day, I just call myself a creative and, use that as the umbrella to tell everyone, like, I can do pretty much anything you ask me to do. I can create it and get it done and execute.
Yeah. It's funny that you use the term creative because I also use it because the same, sometimes people just ask you, hey, I would like to have this done. And then you have to call a photographer, you have to call a videographer, a graphic designer, and nowadays you kind of have to do it all.
Yeah.
Right. So it's pretty cool that you do that. What about you training? Like, as in, did you go to school? Tell me a little bit about your story and how you ended up here.
Yeah. So I think at a young age, I already knew that digital was going to be like one of the focuses of my career. At a young age, like 13, 14 years old, I already knew that I wanted to do this. So I told my parents if they could buy me a computer. My dad ended up buying me a computer through his job. And by just random, I found Photoshop in there and like Photoshop elements. And I started messing with it. And I was like, this is cool. Right. So I just started back then. YouTube wasn't as big as it is now. So I was just fairly like not too many people teaching, So I didn't go to college after high school. So like through my high school, I kind of used it as like, okay, I'm gonna learn this. So by the time I get out of high school, I have already like a foot ahead, So I learned on YouTube every night. I would stay up learning. Eventually, I got good enough to say that I was, doing some graphics. And then I took a step into like the Adobe Max, right? So I knew about them. So I started taking those classes when they were free, right? I wasn't going to them yet, but I knew it was available to like creatives and it was streamed for free, or it was available for you to like use it. And then just kind of like going from there, I think it was just kind of like willpower of sitting at my computer every night and teaching myself how to do it, because I don't have formal training, but everything that I've learned is because of either workshops, going to conferences, learning from other people, learning from other creatives. Now it's like, oh, you see something on TikTok or Instagram, I'll save it and then I'll just kind of think about it and then see how they did it. But then I'm like, no, that's kind of like, I would have done it different. So I just kind of like get inspired by all these little things. But the main thing that for me, when I learned, was kind of like going to these conferences. Yeah.
Was it fun for you? How did you find the drive?
It's just like being able to have a white canvas on Photoshop or Illustrator and then just kind of being able to create something on there and just bring it to life, So after I learned how to use Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, I bought myself a vinyl cutter, right? So I
Okay.
knew that you could cut files from Illustrator into a vinyl cutter. So then I started pressing my own t-shirts, right? But before that, I learned how to airbrush. So it's just like all these things like leading up to just being like a digital creative. Cause I really don't do a lot of airbrushing anymore or vinyl t-shirts. It's more of like, now it's like an apparel side of it. Like, you send it to get produced, stuff like that.
Yeah. Paletero, right?
Paletero. Yeah.
That's right. Paletero. That's kind of like your e-com site.
Yes, sir.
And that is, I would say, like, even after I left the Cowboys, I would see your shit everywhere. I started seeing it. I saw Jesus Ferreira,
Yes.
who saw you. Where was it? You were painting something?
So one of my friends did a mural, Jeremy. And
Biggers?
yeah, Jeremy Biggers. He did a mural, I remember, and he did a mural of Jesus Ferreira. But I think, from what I remember, it was one of my friends that he was doing video, and he was wearing a hat, and then he was like, "Hey, Jesus Ferreira saw my hat. He wants to wear them," and then he reached out, and then we exchanged information, and he's like, "If you get I want all the hats before anybody. Can you make that happen?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." So then he started wearing them, at the training, and then they got posted on the FC Dallas page.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. Like, would you call that kind of like a snowball effect? Because I started seeing that, and then you had a big thing with the Mavs, and also with Trinity FC, who's actually one of my clients. And then I saw the hat, and I was like, "This guy's everywhere, man!" Like, and I went and bought it, and this is probably one of my favorite hats. You have it over there, the maroon one.
The maroon one, yeah.
Yeah. How so? One of the things that I'm fascinated by is how one thing leads to the next and how you end up kind of like with these cool projects. So a couple of questions. One of them is, how did it become a thing, or like with the maps, for example, and how does it work? Like, do you get paid per hat? Do you get paid per collection? Because as an artist, that's probably the hardest thing. How do you negotiate stuff?
You get paid with exposure.
Thank you, man. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've paid my rent and all that stuff with a lot of exposure. Yeah.
Well, no, so the funny story about how the apparel side of my business, because at first I was a creative, and I was doing logos, and I was doing logo packages and branding. I got the opportunity to work on La La Land, which is the coffee shop. So I created that. Once I put that on my website for my portfolio, like, it's just people understand that you can work with clients like that, right? Then I got to work with WWE painting the mural, and then I put that on the portfolio, and now other people understand that you can work with them too. So it's like, I heard it from another artist that I worked with, and he was like, make sure you have it available for other companies to see who you're able to work with. Once they know those companies can trust you, then other companies will follow suit. So I feel like the hard work and the dedication and the persistent and just being at it every day. I wasn't planning on doing hats and apparel, right? I wanted to do it. I just didn't know how to do it. So one of my friends said, "Hey, I'm having this pop-up. Can you bring some merch to sell?" And I was like, "I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to bring? I don't want to press vinyl shirts, So I was like, man, you know what? I learned some stuff here at the Cowboys. Why don't I use it?
Right?
So I was like, let me go and look for a supplier. And I was like, what am I going to lose? A couple $1,000, in samples, right? So I found a supplier, and I submitted a tech pack. And I remember the first ones had like huge logos, and I was like, but people loved them, right? So I printed 50 hats, and those I was supposed to take those to the pop-up. Before I could get to the pop-up, I was wearing it. My friends were wearing it. People were sharing and posting. They were like, "Where did we get this hat?" Right? So I ended up selling all these hats before I got to the pop-up. So I messaged my friend. I was like, "Hey, bro, I don't have any more. I don't have anything to sell."
You got to the pop-up without any merch?
Yeah, I was like, I have to do something else. Let me sell these. and then I'll try to figure something out to get some more by that day. So I used the money that I made from those hats to buy new hats, right? And it just kind of, again, snowballed. And it just I kept using the profit from the next ones to buy more. You know, I started July 2023. I think I did like seven to 10 hats. I don't remember. I'm at like 40 something styles right now.
Dude, they're everywhere, man.
40 something styles, and I keep it limited. I want people to know the story for each hat. I want people to hold it like it's an art piece, you know, because I feel like people can connect when they have one piece of a limited selection.
Yeah, of course. And you create a little bit of tension in there, you know, like not everybody can have it.
Yeah.
And it's a thing, like, it's crazy to me. And I was talking to Bobby on kind of the first episode, like how it's so cool to fucking see it everywhere. And I'm like, I want to be like, I know that guy, man. I was like, oh yeah, you know that? Yeah, I know that guy. I know him.
It's funny because the other day we went to Tom Thumb, and like, I think it was like downtown, and coincidence, right? We get there, we coming out, and I'm walking out, and I look inside the car, and there's a lady wearing one of the hats, and I was like, hey, I like your hat. And she's like, oh, thank you, you know? And it's cool to see. I did it. I didn't say I did it, but
of course, she's gonna be like, what?
Yeah, and then it's just cool because, and then people send me messages, hey, I saw, you know, this person wearing your hat somewhere over here.
Yeah.
One of my friends, he went to Oklahoma to Windstar, and he's like, bro, I just saw somebody over here with your hats.
It's wild.
You know, so like getting those reactions, I love it.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that? Because I remember whenever I would shoot and I would see, for example, your work on either a big screen or a billboard or something like that. At first, it was like, oh, cool. But then after a while, it was like, all right, well, whatever. What's next?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that, or is it like, or do you kind of like, oh, this is so cool. I'm such a cool guy, or whatever? What's your mentality?
No, I think I just love creating and creating something new. I just have to keep moving. I think I felt a peak at a certain point, but then I knew that it wasn't going to last, right? So I knew I had to keep working. And I've talked to other, you know, professionals. I've talked to some athletes, and I've asked them the same question. Like, you know, you have all this money. Like, what's your, you know? And they're like, well, it's the same race. You know, we're trying to pay our bills. We're trying to make more money than what we have. It's the same thing. So it's like, why am I gonna stress about trying to make all this money where I just have something consistent?
Yeah, no, gotcha. So like going back to how to sell this, like the negotiation part, let's say with the Mavs or with anybody, how do you do that? So
the story about the Mavs, I get asked all the time because they're like, how did you do it, right? Everybody wants to know why you and how, right? So one of the first thing that I tell them is I present myself on social media like a professional, right? And I make sure everything that I do has a standard, you know, it has quality and stuff like that. I even asked the Mavs, like, how did y'all find me? And they're like, well, we've been watching you for the past 4 years.
Oh, sure.
Right? So I'm like, why didn't you reach out sooner? You know, that was my question. They're like, oh, we're just watching, you know, from a distance. But then when the opportunity presented itself, everyone was telling us, you need to work with him. You need to work with him. So when they reached out, it was for a t-shirt.
Okay.
Right? So it's the opportunity and being available for the opportunity, and I wouldn't say capitalizing, but just being prepared, right? Because I'm telling you, it's the money that you make from that is very little, but the value that it holds is way more than what I could pay for.
It lasts longer.
Yeah. So they reached out and they wanted a t-shirt, right? The t-shirt, it was going to be like a graphic on a t-shirt for a festival. And I was like, if I'm going to get the opportunity to present, you know, I want to be ready. Right. So when I presented the shirt, I also had other options, and I was wearing one of my hats.
Of course, you got to bring it.
You know, so I was wearing one of my hats. So when I was talking to them, I was like, hey, would you be open to doing a hat? You know, I'm in the room I might as well ask. If they say no, then no. You
Yeah.
know, it's not gonna hurt me
Mhm.
if they say no. So they were like, we like that hat. We love the stitching. You know, what could you show us? And I was like, well, look, I have these tech packs of what it could look like.
Did you make it maps?
Yes.
Nice.
So I already had it ready for them to see. Not a physical sample, but just a mock-up, right? And they were like, oh, we love it, you know. We did some tweaks, and that's really how it happened. Just being prepared, being ready in the moment, right? If you're presented with an opportunity, like, show them what else you can do, because that's the only way you can sell yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
I think also you worked on it too, because I've come across creatives that only do what they're asked to do, but you put the extra work that you didn't know if you were gonna get paid for.
Yeah.
You know, so you prepped that, and you capitalized on the opportunity. I mean, I think that's a good word. You were in the room with decision makers, or even somebody that could talk to somebody else within the organization, right? Yeah. I mean, how much time did you put on that?
On that deck?
Yeah.
I think like a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of weeks of like designing and, you know, ideas and concepting and, you know, mocking up T-shirts. You know, and they asked me for one, and I showed more. You know, so I was like, okay, at least I know I can show them what else I can do. I think that goes a long way, because they weren't expecting it.
Of course.
You know, so when they weren't expecting, and they see all these things, they're like, oh, he can do more than just be that person that just does another design.
That's right. How do you go about, your mentality when you do that? Because, I always have this voice in the back of my head, I'm like, no, man, they're probably not going to like it. They probably think I'm silly, or like, and I've learned how to shut that voice down and then just like put my head down and do the damn thing. Like, how do you deal with that if you have like this tiny fucking voice in the back of your head?
I don't have that voice.
Good.
It's weird, because like everything that I do, I feel like it's true to me. It's true to what I do. And it's like everything that I've worked for, like I understand, like I'm going to use these colors, or I want to show these letters in this way. There's a lot of us creatives that do lettering, and we all have different styles. So when I understood that, I knew that like what I showed, and if I liked it, I knew that other people were going to like it. And I already knew that, at a younger age, before I even started doing like designs on a professional level, because I would do vinyl t-shirts. I'm saying, I would wear them, and people were like, hey, I want to buy that shirt. Like, I already knew that when they saw it, it was going to make an impression, right? So that impression that's what drives me, right? Okay. That the impression, when people come back and tell me, hey, I was wearing your hat, and like I got stopped by like 3 people. They want to know what the hat is or who made it, And then I get like a random follower, and then a message, hey, this guy hit me up, message me, and I gave him your information, right? So always being, not being good enough to reply to people, not being good enough to be like I want to be approachable. I want people to know that I'm approachable, and they can message me. I don't like gatekeeping either. There's been, a couple people that hit me up. Hey, where do you get your hats made?
That was one of them.
I don't mind, because again, I think my style is way different than what anybody else is going to create.
Yeah. A couple of things from that, like one of them being approachable. Like I already knew you, but I contacted you through your Instagram page. You have thousands of followers, and you replied to me, and I was like, oh shit, cool, all right. And then I asked you about the information. You're like, yeah, man, I got him here. And a lot of people are gatekeeping, and you don't do that. And I think that's pretty dope. Not just that, but also I think the reason why you don't have a voice in the back of your head is exactly what you said. You do what you love, and you like what you put out there is who you are, and you're very much okay with that. And you don't care if they're not going to like it. I mean, I'm still going to do my thing, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. I think I can relate to that, because I've had conversations with my wife about that sometimes, where I just like do. I don't really care about if they're not going to like it or not. I'm going to do it. And if they don't like it, well, next, onto somebody that really wants to work with me.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask? I
think another, like when it goes from project to project, also like especially like in the sports, right? When one sports team does it, then other teams see it
Yeah.
because they follow each other on social media.
They get FOMO.
Yeah. So then they're like, okay, we want to work with him too.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I feel like that's how.
Yeah. Is that how you got approached for Trinity?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I even asked, and I was like, I know the girl that contacted me, she had been following me for a while. And then I asked some of the Mavs people, and then she's like, oh yeah, we gave your information to this person.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then this person gives my information to somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of how it goes around.
Yeah. No, that's dope, dude. Like I'm happy to see that. And now that we're in here, I can see all this, where your inspiration comes from, you know, like the colors and the Japanese animation. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
So what you got coming up? Like what, or let's say, do you have any idea of where you would like things to go, or are you kind of going with the flow?
I always go with the flow because I hate to plan for something like too far in advance. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I work on the collections, you know, 1 quarter in advance, right?
Okay.
So I don't work on like the 4th quarter of the year right now. It's just kind of like whatever's going on, how I'm feeling, stuff like that. But something that it's been on my mind, it's kind of like opening up a pop-up retail location.
Okay.
Right. So something where I can be somewhere for, you know, a couple of months and fix it up nice where people can come in and have a full experience of like the Dummy Fresh brand.
That'd be dope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, having the whole experience, like what would that look like? Like colors and
it'd be, I mean, I think it'd be vintage, it'd be retro, it'd be sports, urban, kind of like just a mixture of everything that I've grown up with.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you've seen, but like the past pop-ups that I've done, mm-hmm. like I always go and like build like some type of set. Like it's just kind of like I want people to see it and I want to pull you in there.
Yeah, it's an experience for sure. That's pretty cool. Another thing that I kind of talked to Bobby as well is like everybody knows you, but that's because you go out a lot, right? Do you go specifically to places? Are you strategic about that? Or do you just like go and hang out with whoever you think?
I mean, I try to go to as many places where I can meet other people that are kind of doing the same thing, but I wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. You know, I built my Instagram and I don't think anybody knew who I was up until like a couple years ago.
Okay.
When I really started like posting, you know, and people saw who I actually was, because I would go to places and they were like, "Oh, have you heard of Dummy Fresh?" They would tell me in my face, "Have you heard of Dummy Fresh?"
Oh, really?
He's a good designer. Like he makes some badass logos or whatever. And then I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of him," you know, and not knowing that I was in front of them, right? Yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I need to change. I need people to know who I am.
More like Agustin Chavez.
Yeah. So like now the face behind the Instagram account.
That's right. Yeah. Even whenever I went to your website, like it's agustinchavez.com, right?
Well, I have agustinchavez.com. I have dummyfresh.com. And then I just recently got paletero.com.
Yeah, paletero. I remember that. When I saw that, I'm like, this is great, man. Because like it connects to your Latin roots as well.
Yeah. And so the paletero name comes because if like seeing the paletero get off the van, take down the cart, and then walking all the streets, you know, until they sell as much as they can and then go back and put the cart in the van. At the end of the day, like it's just that mentality of hustling.
Yeah.
You know, of selling and saying like, I'm going to keep walking these streets until I'm done. Like there's no halfway point where he can be like, I think I'm just going to go back home today. No, he has to do the whole route, you know, and then come back to his van.
That's pretty cool.
So that's where I got the idea of the paletero. And then the other side of it is like the paletero has ice cream, has chicharrones, it has candy, it has
a whole bunch of variety of things. You know,
I've seen paleteros with topo chicos and they prepare them for you. So it's just having like a variety of things in one place, and then the mentality of how they distribute and how they sell.
The hustle mentality too. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I like how you connect with like the whole Latin culture. Were you born in Mexico or were you born here?
I was born in Mexico.
Okay.
Allende, Nuevo León.
Nuevo León.
Yeah, Allende, Nuevo León. I was born there, 1988. So that's why you see a lot of that in my hats. The 1988. I was brought here at 2 years old.
Gotcha.
So I've been here 34 years.
Dallas?
Dallas.
That's cool.
Yeah. West Dallas.
West Dallas. There you go,
You can see the West Dallas right here.
It's funny because like those things that you start putting on print or on merch and stuff like that, they become something.
Yeah.
They become something else.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized that with time, doing a whole bunch of creative things, like people kind of like put them on a different, not on a pedestal, but like on a different level. It's more like it lasts longer.
Yeah.
You know, man, that's awesome. So like pop-ups, that would be kind of like the next move.
Retail pop-ups. I've done pop-ups. They're so hard, like getting there, unloading. I want something kind of a little bit more permanent, semi-permanent, right? Not permanent, where I get like a whole year lease, because I feel like I'd have to find somebody to actually have the same mindset of being there, you know? So I want to be able to, if I do a 3-month pop-up where it's a retail space, I want to be involved as much as I can.
Gotcha.
And then kind of like cut it and then come up with the next one and then different location.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
A new experience.
Yeah.
I have, let me see. How are you doing on time?
Oh, we're good.
Okay. I don't know where my phone went. Oh yeah. I was telling one of my graphic designer friends that I was kind of coming here and it's like, yeah, I'm going to go talk to like Dummy Fresh. I was like, what? Dummy Fresh? Like they knew he's from England, dude. Yeah. Don't ask me. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to be with him. So do you have any questions you would like to ask him? His name is Gottfried. All right. So let's see. Let me see. How much of your success would you contribute to organic growth as compared to strategic marketing? How much of it was strategic than organic?
I think all of it has been organic. It's just, like I said, I don't plan, like I don't say like, oh, I'm going to make this hat go viral or anything like that, or I'm going to do this to like rouse some people up or anything like that. I think it's just kind of like being true to my culture, my roots, and then just kind of like having that name behind it. But I don't think there's any strategic, you know what I'm saying? I think now I'm getting more into the strategic because of course you have to plan ahead with like production times, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only strategic part I see is like being aware of like holidays for production times and stuff like that. But I think everything has pretty much been organic as far as like the creation and like putting products out. It's just more of like, if I feel that I want to put it out right now, I'll put it out right now. You know, there's like sometimes I'll say, oh, tomorrow at noon, and I'll just be like, I'll just put it right now. You know,
but that creates like, oh, you know, he did it before, or like people like Radiohead did this too. Whenever they put albums out, they don't say anything.
Yeah,
they just put it out, the whole album,
for
free for download. I think things like that really connect with an audience. And I was like, this guy is my boy, you know, like you can connect to that.
Yeah.
But what I do think the strategic part would come into play in your success is that there's always a place to go. There's always a place to like, you have everything ready. Your website, your photos, your design, and your information. You know where Dummy Fresh is at. You know, like I can see this hat, like, and it connects. Like your whole identity is done and it's ready for people to be like, okay, I'll take this and go with it. Yeah. You know, it's packaged in a way that, you know, for creatives out there, that they don't think about that.
Yeah.
They need to be able to just like, how do they say, pack and play?
Yeah.
Right.
Plug and play. Yeah.
Plug and play with your stuff. Yeah. You know. So.
Yeah, and I learned that early, very early, because I've had my Dummy Fresh website for a while, right? And once I heard from another creative that he was getting these projects, right? He was like, make sure your website is always up to date. Even if you don't use it, make sure they have some way of contacting you through your website. Yeah. Right. And that, I feel like when you're at that level and, you know, companies can reach out, you know, that's the value, you know, it doesn't matter if your website costs, you know, $500 a year. Yeah. Like eventually you're going to make that money back. Yeah. I remember when they reached out for the NASCAR helmet.
Okay.
Right. I think it was one of my first projects that I did that it was like a big brand, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, I remember seeing the email, and I think the email came through my email, not through my website, because I didn't have my website at that. I had a website, but I didn't have a contact form. And then I thought it was fake, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were like, "Were you interested in designing a helmet for a NASCAR driver?" And I was like, I don't know if it's real.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
too good to be true.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, how much do I charge?
That was my question. Yeah.
Yeah, like how much do I charge? I've never done this before.
Yeah.
There's no book out there to tell you how much to charge for a project based on them reaching out to you.
Mhm.
There's ways to figure out how much to charge per hour, right? You can break down your whole year to see how much you want to make, and then you figure out how much you can charge per hour. But I was like, this is a project. It's a one-time thing. I don't want to charge too much and then say no. I don't want to charge too little, and they're like, that's it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you find that? And there's no answer for that. You just have to trust your skills and and be firm.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to be firm in an email, right? But
yeah.
Or show your voice through an email and say, well, this is how much I charge without stuttering. And I think I remember I made like, I think it was like $3,000
Okay.
for that helmet, and I was like,
you could have charged more.
Exactly. Right. But what if I would have charged more and they wouldn't have accepted?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's great. I'm talking about systems, and you said something that I've done as well. Like people ask, how do I charge?
Yeah.
Like I also went down to how much I would like to earn per year,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like go back till you can understand how much you charge per hour.
Yeah.
And then from there, you think, how much time would this take me?
Mm-hmm.
And then buffer it,
Mm-hmm.
and then add
Mm-hmm.
add time to it. So is that kind of like how you do it?
Yeah, for projects like that, it's kind of like the same way. Now I have a more of understanding how much can companies pay, and my first question now is like, what's your budget?
Yeah.
If it's a project like that, what's your budget? They're gonna say, we have this budget, or they're like, we would like to hear your price first.
Yeah.
That's the second question, and I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna give you any prices until you tell me what you're able to spend on this project.
Yeah.
And then it's just a back and forth of that. If you get through that point, then you know that they still want to work with you.
Yeah.
And now you can kind of throw some numbers out, and then you'll get we only have this. Well, I asked you for a budget.
Right? Yeah.
In the beginning, and you told me. So that's kind of like that's kind of how it goes every time.
Yeah. No, and I always have that question first.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just want to hear it, but then you prep a whole like bid. And they're like, nah, that's too much. And I'm like, then why did I have to?
Yeah.
So I do get that, man. It's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
He's got another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, and I probably know the answer based off everything we've talked about, do you compromise your creative vision for business reasons, or how do you handle that? How do you handle the design, branding, and illustration landscape changing in the next few years? I guess that's another question.
Mm-hmm. So what was the first one again?
The first one is like, how do you compromise your creative vision for business reasons?
Like compromise, like saying, like, how do I leverage or balance like the business side and the creative part?
My understanding would be like, do you change what you do because of how much it's gonna make? That's kind of my understanding. I
don't. So I don't care if it's a $10,000 project or a $1,000 project or a free project. Like, I'm still going to give it the same amount of value with my skills, right? It doesn't matter if this person paid me more or this person paid me less. They're going to get the equal amount of, artistic value and creative value.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't like water it down because, they only paid me this much.
Man. My grandfather used to say, if you're going to do something, you're right, man. Yeah. Or don't do it.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
So like a couple of last questions. Who would be your ideal project or your ideal client, or who would you like to work with that you haven't really gotten to? Ideal. I see. Like
ideal, or man, there's so many.
Yeah,
there's so many. But
name a few and we'll tag him.
I would love to work with the NBA.
Okay.
Like on a like on a Hispanic heritage collection or something to bring like kind of like more awareness to the Hispanic creatives or the Latin creatives. The NBA.
Any musicians?
Musicians. Let's see. I did a lot of digital art for music artists here in Dallas. In my beginning early, stages of graphic design. But if I had someone to work with, like on an art project for their album, I think Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne? All right.
Maybe Drake.
Drake or Kendrick?
I don't know.
Man, I would say you can go with Drake. I'll go with Kendrick, man.
Kendrick. Oh my God.
Oh man, no, it's too mainstream right now.
Nah, I don't know. I don't know about music, man. I feel like I'd rather work with other creatives, like in fashion.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like I would love to see like how like Palm Angels, like what their processes are, like the system. I think I'd rather collaborate with like a brand like that, like Palm Angels. Like I love going to Neiman's and like looking at the clothes and looking at all their styles and techniques that they use. Like what's the other one that I always use? Like Amiri.
Okay.
All Saints. Like
All Saints.
Yeah. So like I look into all, even for my personal stuff, I take inspiration from them as well because they're already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
They already thought about this, I don't know, maybe a year in advance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it reminds me of what Virgil used to do, right?
Yeah.
Virgil
like
Abloh,
yeah, with Off-White and stuff.
Off-White brought the urban to like the fashion world. Then he was the head of this was that Louis Vuitton?
Yeah.
Louis, right?
Yeah.
It's wild, you know, and everybody kind of wants to be part of that. That's cool to know because like the first thing I would say is like, okay, maybe musicians, but yeah, fashion makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like even now that Pharrell has been working with Louis Vuitton, like just crazy. Like I try to think like the designer that's putting this tech pack together, like, like what is the direction they got,
how did they get to this point? How did they sell the idea?
That's what I think about. Like I think about that part of it, especially because I'm getting more into like the fashion and to the apparel side. I want to know like who I can like see or try to follow their designers on social media and just kind of like see their vibe, see their vision. But a lot of like the creative directors and a lot of the guys that are designing for these bigger brands really don't show anything on their portfolio, on their
process.
Instagram.
They don't.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'm also fascinated with process. How did you get from point A to point Z? Because it all changes, and there could be like changes last second.
Yeah,
well, that's awesome, dude. So like, just so we can kind of like wrap this up, why don't you, since we're talking about putting your website and all that stuff out there, why don't you tell them where to find you, and so we can just put it out there.
Yeah, so y'all can find me on Instagram, Dummy Fresh. Website is dummyfresh.com for my personal portfolio and stuff like that. And then like my e-commerce website is paletero.com. And I used to have thepaletero.com.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but I ended up buying paletero.com. So now it's like cut off the D and it's paletero.com.
Okay, so you had to make an investment in that.
Yeah,
I would imagine because it's a common world.
Yeah,
a common word. Yeah, crazy. All right, well, that's good, man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, man, like letting me do the questions and all that, and hopefully,
sure.
A few months from now, when I continue to do this, we can touch base again and see where you're at.
For sure.
Cool.
I'm down to do it again.
All right, whenever you do this with Pharrell, let me know.
Yeah,
All right, man.
Appreciate it. Dude. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.